Honest J. Nowak. Coming at you live. Alright. A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and here we are with some more LJN content, and we're successfully approaching the middle of this entire marathon session. And so, let's just get going with some more stuff related to LJN. Because this is turning into LJN. Yeah, and that's actually the subject, so let's go ahead and talk about that. LJN is in fact the name of a toy company from the 80s and 90s. Originally founded by someone who was inspired by a boss/friend of an old job. And believe it or not, the name LJN are actually referred to the initials of the founder's boss, just spelled backwards. So when you really think about it, NJL is actually the initials of the boss. LJN is just the company name. So to me, that actually sounds like a pretty nice idea. Just take your boss's initials and put them backwards, and that's where the company name goes into place. But LJN Toys is a bit more than just a typical sort of clever idea just to come up with a good name for a company. It's gotten a lot of credibility over the past few decades for creating toys, video games, some comics, and some other media. They even went as far as to create their very own video game console in 1987, known as the LJN Video Art Console. I could especially go at this all day about James Duncan Rolfe, an angry video game nerd, specifically about the fact that LJN Toys has been considered the arch nemesis of the angry video game nerd entirely. And there's a reason for this. Because just about every single video game that had ever been published by LJN, as at the time LJN was actually a publisher and not a developer, and most of the developers that LJN had actually worked with to produce all sorts of movie, show, licensed video games out there, franchises of all sorts, had basically been butchered by some of these companies. A Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Back to the Future, Jaws, and much, much more. A lot of different properties had basically been taken by these companies and apparently turned into cult classics that were rather sucky. Even for the time period that they were released in, some people just did not agree with any of these kind of notions. They did not feel like they were as good as Super Mario, or Contra, or The Adventures / Legend of Zelda. But, in all seriousness, it's actually interesting to note that there's a lot more trivia out there than just the fact that the LJN company itself was basically founded by someone who was willing to create an entire toy company, especially after working at a toy company way back in the day. It's also interesting to know that the same guy who founded LJN also founded THQ, which was another popular publisher, but most specifically for the PlayStation 2 era. As I recall, there were so many times in the PlayStation 2 era where I could see the LJN/THQ logos all over the place. I tell you, you couldn't go very far throughout the PS2 console and all of its games without noticing the THQ logo at every single turn. There were tons of different instances of video games where THQ was involved. So, that you could probably tell it's like LJN. But in most instances, THQ actually was a better company overall. And I will also have to admit, I've actually played ROMs of some of the old LJN NES games, especially Jaws and Back to the Future. And I myself have not understood why some of these things were actually bad. I really have not. Maybe there's a reason for it, maybe there isn't at all. But in all cases, I'm willing to let all that go. And well, especially with the fact that there's a 200th episode of Angry Video Game Nerd dedicated to so much around here and there. I tell you, I don't know what else to say at this point. But you know what? We got lots more to talk about here. And I'm more than willing to do so much more for all that is HJN related. So if you want to see more go down on my channel, then make sure that you'll like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.